One woman has been instrumental in advancing the arts in Western New York. A woman on a mission to ensure that everyone can experience the beauty and splendor of symphonic music.
I think JoAnn is magical.
When I play with the Philharmonic, they say, "Don't you just love JoAnn?" And I say, yes, we do.
The passion that JoAnn has for music, she wants everybody to have that same passion.
JoAnn loves Buffalo, and Buffalo loves JoAnn.
In 1999, JoAnn Falletta assumed the podium as music director of the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, becoming the first woman to hold the position and one of the first female leaders of a major symphony orchestra worldwide.
We were looking for someone who would not only become a real leader of our orchestra, but also would become part of our community.
I've been here now 20 years, and I will never leave Buffalo. I am so proud to be a part of this great team.
When we talk about what is best about Buffalo, that heart and pride in what you create, she was the right choice.
JoAnn being the first woman maestro in Buffalo was an amazing moment, and it was a historic moment.
JoAnn broke the mold. She was young, she was energetic, and she just had a whole new way of communicating with the audience.
I think the audience loves watching her. I think she's little but mighty, and I think that her presence is awe-inspiring.
When I was 7 years old, my birthday present was a tiny guitar. I remember being fascinated with that instrument. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life, ever heard in my life. I would play the open strings for hours, just thinking how marvelous this instrument is.
Studying classical guitar and orchestral conducting, JoAnn's passion grew at Mannes College of Music and the Juilliard School. She would serve as the music director of orchestras around the country before making Buffalo her home. JoAnn didn't waste a minute increasing the visibility of the BPO. In 2000, the orchestra created its own recording label, which would later be named Beau Fleuve. A year later, the orchestra released its first recording under the Naxos label. Around the world, people were hearing the BPO with JoAnn at the podium.
We're a small city, and to have an orchestra that is constantly being heard around the world was reserved for years for the Berlins, the Viennas, the New Yorks, that were sort of orchestras for the world. It is meaningful to the musicians and should be meaningful to the community to realize that they have an orchestra here right in town that rivals any orchestra on the planet.
Tom Baker, who was the head of the Oshai Foundation, made the introduction to JoAnn. And his big thing is she needs to be on PBS on a national level. And that was just my first week on the job. I didn't quite know what to say because I didn't know JoAnn, but after lunch with Tom and JoAnn, you just fell in love with her.
PBS felt the same way, and after 4 decades, the BPO returned to primetime national television with Seasons of Life.
JoAnn understood that we were a community asset. She knew that from the get-go. But she also understood that to be recognized in your own community, you have to spread out and be recognized elsewhere.
In 2002, JoAnn was the recipient of the Seaver National Endowment for the Arts Conductors Award for Exceptionally Gifted American Conductors. In 2004, JoAnn, the BPO, and WNED worked to create the JoAnn Falletta International Guitar Concerto Competition.
The things we offer on our air and the classical station that we have, shouldn't we engage in something that relates to our audience with classical guitar? It's the only competition in the world where you had a chance, if you made it to the finals, to play with a full orchestra.
In addition to the gold medal, Marson also receives a recording contract and a return engagement with the Buffalo Philharmonic.
Her charisma, her engagement, her understanding, her name really brought great visibility at an international level to the competition.
In 2004, the BPO returned to the world-famous Carnegie Music Hall to perform and record for National Public Radio, another sign of its artistic growth under JoAnn's leadership. In 2009, the BPO took home a Grammy with John Corigliano's Mr. Tambourine Man, 7 poems of Bob Dylan.
That was an incredible risk of a work. The audience came expecting Bob Dylan and all those nice sounds that you get, and Corigliano went exactly the opposite way. He composed a 7-movement work. The first 6 movements were harsh, angry, and the last movement was sublime. You could feel the whole audience sigh and relax with this, and that takes courage.
In 2013, the orchestra was chosen to return to Carnegie Hall to be part of the Spring for Music Festival.
Most recently at Carnegie Hall, we played Glier Symphony. The following from Buffalo that came was overwhelming. It was a really magical night that no one's ever going to forget.
More than 1,500 people from Buffalo were in attendance, which was record-breaking for Carnegie Hall, and showed the love the Buffalo community has for its cultural crown jewel. The BPO has toured to Florida several times in the past decade, performing for sold-out audiences in some of the state's premier cultural venues, and reconnecting with the many supporters and friends who have left Buffalo for warmer climates during the winter months. In 2018, the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra embarked on an international tour to Poland to perform at the Ludwig van Beethoven Easter Festival in Warsaw. It was a monumental venture for the orchestra, sending 100 staff, musicians, and all of their instruments overseas for the first time in 30 years.
When that concert was done, and they don't do this in Poland, they don't give standing ovations. The whole audience rose up and applauded, and that was powerful.
JoAnn has come to be internationally celebrated and is often invited to guest conduct many of the world's finest orchestras. In 2018, JoAnn won her first individual Grammy Award as conductor of the London Symphony in the category of Best Classical Compendium.
Yes, right, thank you. Exactly at G, 1 before G, 1 before G.
We play a lot of works by lesser-known composers. When you've listened to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony 10,000 times, you start looking for more. And she finds these works that are of equal compositional value and beautiful and complex that we just don't know about.
Not too loud there.
I think she recognizes that music is living, and we so often play music that is composed 200 years ago or 100 years ago. There's still music going on today, and she understands how to bridge that gap. So over the years, we've learned relax, trust, breathe, and see where it's going. And it's never let me down. She's never let me down.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
I think JoAnn has put the BPO in the minds of many more people than ever really thought of it before.
Going out into the community and saying, here we are. We may play downtown, but we are here for you as well. It enhances the life in these neighborhoods to an extent that we can't really appreciate.
Art is a universal language, and music within the art space that much more so. And JoAnn and the orchestra really understand that and have fully embraced that opportunity to build bridges in our community through music.
This summer, we did a marvelous thing. We did an entire day program with the orchestra, finishing the evening at Central Terminal on the east side of Buffalo.
She has led the orchestra to embrace innovative programming, such as the Enlighten event at the Richardson Complex.
I think of Enlighten, which was a collaboration between the BPO and the Richardson, and it was an enormous show. People were going crazy trying to get onto the Richardson campus.
That became an incredible event that thousands of people went to, and it was broadcast around the world.
One of the new things that JoAnn is a part of is this idea of the Diversity Council.
It's a commitment to art, and art is diverse. It comes from everywhere. It comes from around the planet.
We bring in classical artists of color. We do compositions, and we don't just do it in Black History Month. We do it all year.
JoAnn has always believed that developing new audiences begins with access to music education from an early age. Under her lead, the BPO has grown an expansive education program that now serves more than 50,000 students each year, both at Kleinhans and out in the community, including more than 18,000 students in the Buffalo Public Schools alone.
We all know the importance of having a great educational system, but sometimes I think we forget how important the arts are in relationship to building a community. And I think that's where the BPO comes in.
Under her leadership, the orchestra is finding new ways to reach a non-traditional classical music audience by presenting exciting thematic programs and a variety of world-class artists in its pops, rock, and film series.
We played a concerto written by the drummer from the Police. We had the most interesting audience that was here to listen, and these are people that might not have come to a classics concert, yet they got to hear a piece of new music by someone that they respected alongside a piece that was performed for them maybe for the first time. And if we're not serving those people, then we're not really doing our job if we're not serving the entire community.
What we're doing is creating this wonderful environment that once you get here, or once you've awakened to the Renaissance, you can appreciate the richness of your life, which the BPO certainly contributes to.
She's an incredible role model as to what visionary leadership looks like and how to take a platform such as the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra and have it become a crown jewel of our regional renaissance.
Over the past 20 years, JoAnn Falletta and the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, with the aid of so many supporters who recognize the BPO as a community treasure, have led the charge in building a better Western New York community. Note by note.